Argos go, go, go. Pull together, fight the foe, foe, foe. Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach the top. Pull together till the Grey Cups won. Go Argos, go, go, go. Go Toronto Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the foe, foe, foe. Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach the top. Pull together till the Grey Cups won. Go Argos, go Toronto, go. Go Argos, go, go, go.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to episode 15 of the Argo Bounce live audio show here on the Saturday, November 4th, 2023. And I'm looking forward to speaking to Nick tonight about the Argos 16-2 season and talk about the East and West semifinals as well. I'm going to bring Nick on, and we're just waiting for a guest to come on as well. So I'm going to bring on Nick. If Nick can maybe talk for a couple minutes, as I'm going to try to get our guest to come on. Hey, Nick, how you doing, buddy?
Doing fine, Chris. We picked up another win. We set our franchise record, and that was last week. Our new opponent, now that we know who we are facing in the East Final, the Montreal Alouettes managed to defeat the Hamilton Tiger Cats by a healthy 27-12. And right now, live as we're watching here, recording here, late in the fourth, 41, Calgary 19. So it looks like BC will most likely play Winnipeg in the West Final. So we're getting a pretty clear picture now on what the playoffs are looking for coming into the finals this coming week.
Well, thank you so much for coming on here today. And we're just going to have our guest on in just a minute. I just got to send him the link. I tried to send it to him on Twitter, but sometimes Twitter is very funny with links. So I'm going to just email him the link. And our guest is going to be Marty York, former sports journalist with the Globe and Mail, TSN, Sportsnet, Metro newspapers across Canada, and he's a big CFL fan. So we'll get Marty's thoughts on the Argonauts 16-2 season and today's playoff games as well. I just sent him the link, so hopefully Marty York will join us in a few minutes. And anybody watching this live stream right now on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter/X, I still call it Twitter. If you have comments, questions, or suggestions for the show, please send us a message. Or you guys can text me at 519-820-7188. I know there's some Tiger Cat fans out there that wanted a platform tonight to vent on their team's frustration again, as the Hamilton Tiger Cats lost 27-12 to Montreal for the second straight year in the East semifinals, and in a year they were expected to go to the Grey Cup since they were hosting it. Nick, thoughts on the Montreal-Hamilton game as we wait for Marty York to come on?
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to watch the game live. I had another commitment. It's weird for me because I usually put CFL football at number one. But I had another commitment, so I didn't get to check out the entire listening to it on radio through the on TSN 690, I believe, is the Montreal station. So I listened through that, and it was about halfway through the third quarter where Montreal was leading, but Hamilton was still within reach of coming back. And noticeably, it was right as Fajardo had the drive where he gave up the turnover. And what I think really summed up the thing with Hamilton's performance in this game was just they lack the offensive drive and the
Firepower.
ability to really finish plays and score points, score touchdowns when they needed on Leggio. And when I look at it kind of in the post game statistics, like it wasn't Schultz's best game. 13 for 23, 144 yards, one INT when he got pulled. Bo came in really late in the fourth, and it was kind of lost at that point. It wasn't reasonable to fourth quarter. I don't blame too much on Bo. But then I look at like the performance of the receivers in the rushing game. Butler was okay, 83 yards, 13 carries. That's reasonable. But then you look at the receiving core, and I think that's where you really see the big differences. Like Eater, and he was only targeted 4 times, 2 receptions, 37 yards. You look at other guys, Keandre Smith, 7 of 4 targets for 31 yards. And I think James Butler, 4 for 2, 8 yards. And Tim White targeted 3 times, not a single catch. The guy probably up there as one of the more recognizable receivers. 1 reception on 1 pass for 2.
All right, Nick, Anyways, Nick, I'm going to bring her a guest. He just came on. His name is Marty York. He's a former longtime sports journalist with the Globe and Mail. Read his articles many years with TSN, Sportsnet, Metro newspapers across Canada. And I'm looking forward to having Marty on our show tonight. Hi, Marty. How you doing?
Hi, Chris. How are you?
Good. And my co-host is Nick Small. He's a huge Argo fan and CFL fan, too.
Hi, Nick.
Hey, Marty.
Notice the hat my son got me.
Very nice. Go Argos.
Marty, so go ahead.
I was just going to say, even after my journalistic career, I still try to stay somewhat neutral and objective. So I'm just wearing this hat because my son got it for me.
Definitely.
Has good taste.
But hey, Marty, I was going to say thank you so much on behalf of Nick and myself for coming on the Argo Bounce Live audio show. And what were your thoughts before we get to the Argonauts? What were your thoughts on the East semifinal game today and the West game going on so far, which I think BC's turned it into a blowout, which I predicted?
Yeah, I did too. But well, first of all, thanks for having me on, Chris. And second of all, I was kind of disappointed with the Tiger Cats performance today. You know, I for fun on X, which is formerly Twitter, I always have for about, 25, 30 years now, probably even longer, done my CFL weekly picks against the spread. And I just had a hunch, because I've seen this kind of thing happen so many times in yesteryear, when a team bounces back from being defeated 3 times in a regular season, as Hamilton was by Montreal. And I just thought that today I had this hunch that they would put it together and upset Montreal, because I don't think Montreal is that solid a team. And if you recall, guys, at the beginning of the year, Hamilton was forecast by most of us to win the East Division, not the Argos, but the Ticats. And they didn't come anywhere close to achieving anything in the regular season. And they certainly fell flat on their faces today in Montreal. And I would definitely suspect that there will be a coaching change. I've known Orlando Steinauers for a long time. I covered him when he was a player, and he is a good guy, but he's got to be responsible for a fiasco of a season in Hamilton.
And they got some issues with the quarterbacks too. He signed Bo Levi Mitchell to a 3-year contract, big money to be your franchise quarterback, and he doesn't come into the game until 6:42 left in the game. And to me, I thought they waited too long to switch over to Mitchell to try to get that offense going.
You're not alone, my friend. That's exactly what people I've talked to this afternoon think. It's a common feeling. I don't know what was going on there. I mean, if they were going to take advantage of Mitchell's experience, not that he's been very good himself. Hasn't been very effective in a couple of years now, and he's been hurt a lot. And even last week when he got an opportunity to return and start that game in Montreal, he didn't look very sharp. I thought the idea of starting Schultz was a good one because most games that I've seen him play, he's been very effective, but he was having great trouble today. And I think you mentioned it earlier on your podcast here that, Tim White, was not used at all. This guy led the league in receiving.
Invisible. And same with Godwin. They have some nice receivers.
Yeah, they do. And Godwin's good. I like Smith.
Yes.
I thought this, I thought they would be effective today. I really did, but they didn't come close. And kudos to Montreal. They did have a good game today.
Absolutely. And one thing, I've had Tommy Condell on, good guy, and I think he'll be back in football, but I don't think he was all responsible for their issues. I think there's more issues with the Tiger Cats offense than just Tommy Condell's play calling, in my opinion.
Well, I saw the offensive line break down quite a bit as well, and that forced Schultz to throw up, to toss up some balls that were pretty errant, and so there is, I think, some weakness on that offensive line. God bless Chris Van Zyl. He's been around for 15 years.
Wow. Yeah, a long time.
Yeah, but he had to come in today. I could see every single play he was asking the lineman next to him what they were running. He wasn't part of the Hamilton team. They just had to bring him back as an insurance lineman. And sure enough, someone got hurt, and that line broke down even more. Van Zyl was in there, and he's probably a Hall of Famer, but he couldn't handle that position there tonight. That defensive line with Montreal was making Schultz hurry up, and Bo Levi Mitchell didn't do anything either. But they didn't give him much of an opportunity. I agree with you. He came in too late.
Is this possibly, Nick, give me a second and I'll let Nick do some talking too, because he's a great co-host and he loves the Argos and CFL. Is there a possibility that could have been the last game we see Bo Levi Mitchell play as a quarterback, or do you think he still wants to play? And I know one of the guys, Samori Lawrence, has already come out and said to Matthew Shinetti after the game that this isn't the end of him. He wants to come back next year's season as well.
Yeah. Well, Lawrence is another future Hall of Famer. The guy has the most tackles in Hamilton Tiger Cat franchise history, Chris. So, and he's still fine. He's still a good player. I'd like to have him myself if I were running a team. Bo Levi's a different story. I don't know what's going on, but, Dave Dickinson, despite what's happening with the Calgary Stampeders today and even this whole season, is an astute football guy. He's brilliant. And, he would not have agreed, and neither would Huffnagel, to unload Mitchell for mayor if they didn't think the writing was on the wall for him. So I didn't think that he would be ineffective with Hamilton. He got hurt. And I think now in his, later years, I think, look, he's going to the Hall of Fame too. But his career, it may be over, but he's also, from what I understand, I know there's no such thing as guaranteed contracts in the CFL, but from what I understand, they're committed to paying him quite a bit. So I guess we'll find out if he's back. But yeah, to answer your question quickly here, yes, I think there's a good chance he won't be back.
All right, Nick, what are your thoughts on the game between Montreal and Hamilton? And do you have some questions or comments for Marty?
Yeah, I think that with regards to Bo Levi Mitchell, and that it's a multi-year contract, I still expect him to return for Hamilton next year. Whether or not he's going to fall within that role as being the guy, as this main starter, or if he'll slip back and maybe be more of a mentor coach. I think that might be something that we'll have to wait a bit in the offseason to see. The other thing too, with that pending coaching change out of the coaching side and go into the management own president side, could we see the Scott Milanovich move in and be the head coach? Scott has worked with veteran quarterbacks, guys with experience before. The guy I think of is Ricky Ray when he was going from kind of his prime into his later years. So I could see I could see him as someone who's able to coach someone who's in that same sort of situation. When I look at the stat sheet from the game, I'll have to preface this. I mentioned it earlier in the show, but I didn't get a chance to actually watch the game fourth quarters on the way home. But one thing I noticed looking at the stat sheet now, the O-line gave up 5 sacks to Montreal. And one thing my dad, who watched the game on TV when I got back, he mentioned was that they interviewed Sean Lem before the game, and he asked, a sack tonight, Schultz or Bo Levi Mitchell, and he said both, and he got a sack against each of them. So
that's right.
Yeah, definitely the O-line is I think a big problem right now in Hamilton. They're in, like, they focused on signing some big name guys like Bo Levi Mitchell at quarterback, but they didn't build the foundation around them. The O allows teams to succeed. And by contrast, you see the example in Toronto, what they've set, where their O-line is some insane ratio, like plus 50 sack differential on the O-line versus D-line. So by that ability, you get more opportunities. You're providing more protection to your quarterback. You're allowing, especially with somebody who's frail, like, you need that strong O-line in front of them. And I think Hamilton just sort of failed to build that around them this year. And I think if they're looking, especially if they're looking to keep Bo around next year, you got to build that O-line base even more.
Well, those are good points, Nick. I mean, you're absolutely right. As I said a little earlier, the offensive line is like paper mache there in Hamilton. And I think that's a large reason why they were so overwhelmed today in this game, which, again, surprised me. But, you mentioned Milanovich, and I'll comment quickly on that. I suppose it is a possibility that he could take over in Hamilton. He certainly has the resume. He certainly has the experience in the CFL. But I keep hearing other things about him. In fact, I hear he's really high up on the Saskatchewan Roughriders coaching wanted list. So, pardon?
Yeah, I was going to say Saskatchewan's looking for a head coach too.
Right, that's right. And so I think Milanovich may be in a pretty good position, because the truth is there simply aren't that many head coaches out there in the primes of their careers, let's say, with a lot of experience. And experience in the CFL is always such a prerequisite. So I think Milanovich may end up having a choice. I don't know if he'll want to stay in Hamilton. It just doesn't seem to have that much upside. Mind you, some changes might trigger some positive news there. I don't know. But I want to throw something at you guys, because both of you love the CFL.
Go ahead, Marty.
And this is something that I was thinking about this week. I know Wally Buono is he's up there in age, but he's still sharp. And he is the winningest coach in CFL history. I mean, why not try him again? I mean, Marv Levy was coaching in his 70s,
yes.
80s.
Yes. Age is just a number. Age is just a number.
Right. And if you're a winner, like Buono has been everywhere he coached, he won. I don't think anybody knows the game better than him. So,
absolutely.
So I don't know. I'd throw him in the mix. I really would. I mean, in either Hamilton or Saskatchewan. Imagine what, you know how they love their football, their CFL in Saskatchewan.
Oh, yes.
Imagine if Wally went there and turned that program around and they started winning. Can you imagine what an icon he would be there?
Absolutely. I follow his daughter, Christy, on social media.
Yeah.
And she said his dad's only been to a couple games, but when he's sitting down, he's still like he's coaching, and you can't ever get you can retire from coaching, but you can't ever take the coaching out of that person. And I agree. If Wally feels up to it physically and mentally, I wouldn't have a problem with him coming back.
He looks great. In fact, Christy posted something on X of her and her father attending an Arizona Cardinals NFL game.
Yes.
And he was great. He walks better than I do, and he's a lot older than me. So I think he's a special guy, and I'd love to see him back in the CFL. I just think he was a great coach.
Nick, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I not to sound like I'm just playing devil's advocate, but I don't know. I don't really see that he'll be into doing something. BC was still.
Sorry, Nick. I just want to tell you, I suggested it on X, and he liked the tweet.
Okay, well there you go. I mean, I don't know. It might have been different if it was like Calgary or BC or Montreal, who he had previous ties to. I don't know about either Hamilton or Saskatchewan coming without the same kind of level.
I understand what you're saying, but he went to BC without any. Mind you, it was a few years ago, no question, but he did go to BC without any previous experience there, other than being a visiting coach and visiting player. So, I mean, if he's as fit as I think he is, and I'm told he is, then I don't see why he couldn't adapt quickly to either one of those two locations.
Yeah,
Marty and Nick, I want to throw two names out to you guys.
Okay.
We'll get a great conversation going here. There's two guys I think could make good head coaches in the CFL: Henry Burris and Anthony Calvillo. Just thoughts, Marty and Nick.
Okay, well, first of all, Chris, I remember, I know both of them very well, and not to name drop or anything, but those two guys were premier quarterbacks in the time that I covered the league, which was for three or four decades, and became friendly with both of them. And both of them told me they had aspirations. Anthony Calvillo would undoubtedly want to be a head coach someday. He's been an offensive coordinator and a coach for both Montreal and Toronto for many years. And every assistant coach wants to ultimately be promoted to head coach. AC is no different. And I think he'd be fine. He certainly has the acumen. Henry Burris also is really brilliant. And believe me, I don't go around stroking guys. It's not my nature. But he's also a very, very, very smart guy. He's had some coaching experience now in the NFL. But I can remember when I was on the panel at TSN, Henry Burris would tell me that's what he ultimately wanted to do. And he did do it for a little while after he retired as a quarterback. And I think I haven't talked to him in a while other than through social media. But I think he's turned his attention on coaching. So, I mean, if he wants to do it, I don't see why he wouldn't be a good candidate as well. I mean, we've seen other guys, contemporaries of both Calvillo and Burris. I mean, we've seen Kahari Jones coach. I thought he was quite good, but I know he got fired yesterday as the offensive coordinator in Ottawa, but that was because he wasn't getting along with Bob Dice. Mm-hmm. Also, we see Jason Moss and we see Dave Dickinson, and all these guys were star quarterbacks against guys like Burris and Anthony Calvillo. So I can see both of them coaching as head coaches the way that those other guys do.
I'm glad you brought up Kahari Jones because he was someone that came to my mind first as for Saskatchewan. He'd be someone who I could see fill the role in Hamilton, particularly because after he got let go by Montreal, he joined Hamilton's staff. So that kind of thing was something I thought of as a potential role filler in that sort of offensive coordinator, head coach position should Steinauer move up or Milanovic move out.
That's a really good point, Nick. Kahari Jones, probably just because he's experienced. He was good in Montreal, I thought, as a head coach. I know that he got Ken there because they wanted changes. Machocha came in and new ownership and all that kind of stuff. But I think Kahari Jones was a perfect example of a very good player turning into a very good head coach. I still think he's capable of being a good coach. And you're right. He did work in Hamilton for a little while. He knows the ins and outs of Hamilton. The problem with him in Ottawa, clearly, and I saw him and Bob Dice squabbling on the sidelines on several occasions because, Akari was just sort of sent in there last minute. He has his own way of doing things. And Bob Dice didn't understand it. And they would actually bicker with each other right on the sideline about what play to use. And Kahari would say, hey, let me decide this, because I don't blame him for doing that. But clearly he needs a head coaching position. And I think he's another guy who has to be interviewed.
Absolutely. Hey, I'm just going to give you guys an update. BC's got the 41 points, and they're going to most likely win, but the Calgary Stampeders just got a touchdown to make it 41-30. And you know what? I didn't even think the score would be that close, but you got to give the Calgary Stampeders credit for at least making it somewhat competitive. And since I have you on here, Marty, I want to get your thoughts on the Calgary BC game. And obviously, it's going to be BC Winnipeg next week. And also, I want to ask you and Nick about what challenges this Alouettes team can give the Argos that they didn't do last year in the East Final.
Okay. Who goes first?
Nick, you want to go first?
Yeah, well, I've had the game on BC game up until we started recording. I turned it off, save some bandwidth and focus more on our show. But yeah, it's been a really exciting game. My dad told me, put it bluntly, that he thought the Montreal Hamilton game was a little boring at times, with it being kind of low scoring, not many touchdowns, especially on it. Watching the BC game, it was really back and forth and really intense in that first bit, especially when Calgary scored that touchdown on the first drive. But Vernon Adams has you look at sort of his ties with Kahari Jones back in Montreal and how their careers were kind of cut together, where when Adams got traded and then Kahari Jones got fired as head coach, Adams has still been able to succeed now in BC with seeding since then. And I think he's shown, like, especially with the leg brace off, he's shown that he's full 100% ready to go, and he's doing whatever it takes to win. So I'm really excited by that. And then if we switch gears and we talk a little bit about Montreal coming in to play Toronto, I think what you see right now out of Montreal is that they're definitely a much better team defensively, the way they've played, and but shutting down Matt is going to be a far different task coming this week if you're going to try to shut down Chad Kelly. Like, we looked at how Chris, you mentioned the stat before we started recording, where I think Sean Lemon has had 11 sacks in the last
14 games.
14 games. Yeah, he's had one of them against Toronto. So I think that it's a different beast. You've got a much better O-line in Toronto, and you've got a much diverse receiving core. We've seen in Toronto that the overall targets and yards, but Chad Kelly seems to always find the open guy, and he's not afraid to throw to him down the field. So I think it's going to be a very different task trying to shut down the Argonauts offense. And then defensively, I mean, Fajardo, he only he only put up like 230 yards, I want to say, something in that ballpark, 212. And this game, 15 for 23. The Argos D will absolutely eat you alive if you just throw the short 4-yard check downs. Percent of your passes, but they're going to go nowhere down the field. So as long as the Argos play their systems, which they've been all year, with their top string guys, no less, I'm not particularly worried about the rust or anything else. I think on paper they're still a far better team, and holding Fajardo to 2 in Toronto should be no problem.
Well, you covered a lot there, and I agree with almost everything that you said. I'd be stunned if the Argos couldn't get past Montreal again. They beat them, 3 times this year during the regular season. I know a couple of the games were close, but while Montreal, has exceeded my expectations this season, they're still a second place team, and the Argos are in that elite 3, let's say. It's them, it's Winnipeg, and it's BC. And by the way, the Lions just ended that game. It is 41-30 final. And the Lions are an exceptional team. I think Rick Campbell is a great coach. And I think Vernon Adams got a raw deal, much like you just said, Nick, in Montreal, very similar to what happened with Kahari Jones. I don't get it. I still don't get what happened there. But Jason Moss has done a good job, and the Alouettes, you can't take anything away from them. I do think they're going to run into a dead end in Toronto next week, because this Toronto team, unless we see a shocker, is destined, has been destined since the first game, I think, this year to go to the Grey Cup game. It's going to be very interesting. I'm going to look ahead and say, okay, Toronto wins that game next week against Montreal. And then I say they'll represent the East in the Grey Cup game. I think the Winnipeg BC game could be a classic next week.
Absolutely.
I think that's going to be. I think Vernon Adams had his best game as a CFLer today, especially in that first half. He was unreal today. I've always thought he's a good quarterback for the CFL. He's he's too small for the NFL, but I could see that guy being giving Winnipeg fits next week. Chris, I know that you think similar thoughts.
Absolutely. And he looks healthy. And the thing is, he can beat you with his arm. He can beat you with his legs. And I think and Marty and Nick, sometimes quarterbacks just need to be with the right team and the right coach and the right system. And I think this was the best thing that happened to Vernon Adams going to BC. And at the time, BC fans were like, oh, we lost Nathan Rourke. But I don't hear anybody in BC right now complaining about how much they miss Nathan Rourke. No disrespect to Nathan Rourke. It's just this is the kind of season he's had, Vernon Adams Jr. And I think BC has an excellent football club. And I think they have a very good chance of going into Winnipeg and upsetting. I know they'll be the underdogs, but I think it could be a classic game next week with BC Winnipeg. As for Toronto Montreal, I still think the Alouettes are a better team than they were last year, and I think William Stanback could be an X factor in this game. I do think the Argos defense has one weakness. I think you can run on them, and I think Stanback can do that. And I think if the Alouettes can control the clock, I think that's their best chance, because if Kelly in that offense is on the field for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, the Argos are going to get too many opportunities to score. That's just my take on it.
Well, that's why they play the game. And I Stanback did look good today, but the Toronto defense is it's underrated, because not all of those guys on that defense are household names. In fact, I don't think any are, maybe one or two. For real CFL fanatics. But they're solid defense. I cannot see that offense of Montreal succeeding. Even Stanback, I can see him getting a few yards, but not many. I do want to say this real quickly about Vernon Adams. while he had an exceptional game today, and while there were many exceptional games that he had during the course of the season, and he can run. He showed today he runs better than I thought he could, and he does have a good arm. But he is inconsistent, and he has thrown in a few clunkers. So going into Winnipeg, he has to be on his A game.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's don't forget he threw 5 interceptions against Toronto.
Toronto, yes,
in
July.
Toronto, yeah. So I mean, Winnipeg's defense, don't underestimate the Bombers. This is a very, very good team too, I think, and I think the Bombers are going to beat the Lions in that game. But they have a chance. The Lions, if the Lions play like they did today, but there's a big difference between Calgary and Winnipeg.
And Winnipeg, absolutely. And Calgary, this was their worst team, I think, in 20 years.
Yeah, they barely made the playoffs.
Absolutely. Hey, Marty, are you okay for a few more minutes and a few more questions?
A few more, yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
In terms of all-time Toronto Argonaut teams, Marty, where does this team rank with franchise record setting 16-2 regular season?
Wow, that's a great question, Chris. I mean, the numbers, if you want to go by the numbers alone, they speak for themselves, right? Because they tied the CFL record and they set a franchise record, right? So, from that perspective, you have to say this is the best Argo team in history. And they won the Grey Cup last year. They're defending champs. So I don't know how this is possible, but they're underrated. This is a team that, has broken records. Kelly surfaces he's the MOP of the league. There's no question that he's the best player in the league. And how did this all happen? And I think the guy who doesn't get enough credit for the Argos' success is Pinball Clemens. And I remember breaking the story that he was going to be a head coach of the Argos way back when I found out before anyone else did. And we broke the story in the Globe and I think on TSN as well. And people doubted it. They questioned my accuracy. They said, there's no way Pinball Clemens can't be a good coach. Well, not only was he a great coach, underrated great coach. Not only was he a great player, but everybody knows that, but he's a great general manager, president, executive in the CFL. And he has something to do with recruiting these guys. And he doesn't get much credit for that kind of thing. These guys on this team have set records and they're favored to win the Grey Cup. So you got to give him some of the credit. How does it rank with other teams? I mean, I saw some teams that were terrific. I mean, I saw the 83. I was a young reporter, but I saw the 83 Argos, with some of my favorite people of all time. Hank Alisic's one of my best friends. There was Holloway and Barnes and Minter
and Terry Greer
and Ferroni. I mean, this was a great, great team with Obilovich coaching. I didn't even mention the defense. So that was a good team too. But this one has all the records. It's so hard to compare because it's a different era. Things changed. I mean, I don't think the competition is as good in the CFL as it was back then. I'm sorry to say that, but that's the truth in my mind. I just don't think that the talent level is as high as it used to be in the CFL. And part of that has to do with the NFL, and I'll try to explain quickly. Years ago, you had some of the top quarterbacks in the CFL who weren't getting a chance in the NFL to play because they were black. And simple as that. There was a racism issue in the NFL. And so guys like Warren Moon and Conrad Holloway and Damon Allen and Tracy Ham and Chuck Ely and on, guys who could play in the NFL without question, didn't get the opportunity. So the CFL was a haven for them. and the CFL was better for it. I mean, these guys were great, a lot of them, and so the CFL was so talented. Right now, we have in the CFL a dearth of top quarterbacks because the NFL has changed its crazy thinking, and now it gives opportunities to good black quarterbacks to play. And it's a touchy subject, but it absolutely happened. And I think the CFL was more talented back then. Anyway, I just thought I'd get that off my chest.
Absolutely. Hey, Marty, I'm 51. So that 83 Argo team is special because growing up, I started liking them in the 70s, and they were the lovable losers, and the Argo Bounce meant the team screwed up back then and would lose games. And the 82 team, I really thought the 82 team, I'm not making excuses, but they did beat the Eskimos in 82 in August at Exhibition Stadium. And I think if that Grey Cup, the weather wasn't so bad, I really think that weather impacted the Argos' run and shoot offense under Mouse Davis and Obilovich and Holloway. I really think they could have won that Grey Cup in 82.
Well, you bring back memories, but I remember that so fondly. I was right there with you, and it was a very good team. I mean, Warren Moon had a good game that game, right? 82.
Oh yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, don't get me wrong. No disrespect to the Eskimos or the Elks. They were a great team. I just thought, as an Argo fan back in 83 or 82, that the team could have won it, especially when Emmanuel Tolbert had that, 86-yard touchdown catch to make it 7-1. They got off to a good start. And then,
Wow. That brings back a memory. I forgot about that. Oh, and Emmanuel Tolbert's had some problems since his career.
Yes, I've heard. Yes.
That's another story.
But to me, the 83 team, to me, being an 11-year-old kid, is still going to be my favorite Grey Cup. Not that I don't love all the Grey Cup championships. It's just because my late father was still alive, and I got to watch him. I got to witness him winning a Grey Cup for the first time in 31 long years with my late father, and just those teams. And you know what, too, Marty? I don't mean to ramble on. Right now, with the stability of this team, with Pinball Clements, Dinwiddie, the coaching staff, John Murphy, it reminds me of the stability they had in the 80s with Bob Obilovich and Ralph Saggio, and they had really good, solid program in the 1980s for the most part.
Well, they did because they won, as you said. But I think this team is more stable, and I'm not taking a shot at Obilovich. Heaven knows I did plenty of that in the old days. But I mean, he was a very, very good, solid coach. I think Saggio had a rocky way of running things. He wouldn't, let him rest in peace. He would not be able to get away with the kinds of things and the kinds of treatment he gave players in this day and age. And I think Pinball Clemens, Michael Clemens, understands contemporary athletes. I think he knows how to deal with he's an incredible human being. He's the real deal. I've seen a lot of phonies over the years. Michael Pinball Clemens is the real deal, and he knows how to deal with these guys. And I think he gets the most out of them. I mean, I didn't think Ryan Dinwiddie was a good coach. I had no idea. The only thing I remember about Ryan Dinwiddie before he came to the Argos was that he came out of nowhere to fill in for, I think it was an injured Kahari Jones in a Grey Cup game.
2007.
I think, wasn't it?
And I remember them going on and on about how Dinwiddie was a really good quarterback and he was going to win that Grey Cup. Well, he didn't win, did he? Dinwiddie. And I don't know. I just didn't think that he was going to be that qualified a coach. He's turned out to be a darn good coach, and in a fairly low-key manner, I think. And I think that's the thing with pinball. I remember once Pinball and I were doing a TV show, and we were having a little bit of a disagreement on this show. It was live, and all of a sudden he just said, I can't imitate him, but he said, Marty, you don't have to scream to make your point. Just relax. And it was right on the, and he was right. He was absolutely right. So he has a way of settling down his players and his coaches, and I think he contributes a lot more than we all know to that success.
Absolutely. And Marty, I'm 51, trying to get into radio and a new career. And the CFL and the Toronto Argonauts organization, Pinball Clements, Chris Belinovich, and the entire organization, they treat me like a part of the team. I'm
Amazing.
also I'm a first time season ticket holder as well, but just for my media work and being able to do live interviews with coaches and players, and Pinball comes up and gives me a hug, and it's like, as much as I love the NFL, where
Yeah.
am I going to get a Hall of Fame player and a
No.
general manager coming up to me and hugging me?
You won't. He's the real deal. I mean, a lot of the other guys we mentioned in the CFL, even during our conversation here, Chris and Nick, are first-class guys like Henry Burris and some of the others we've mentioned. They're great guys too. But Michael Pinball Clemens is an exceptional, not only football guy, but human being. And, okay, it's enough. I don't want to go on and on, but Chris, actually, it's nice to hear that he and the organization treat you well, because I think this organization deserves so much more recognition and kudos than it gets. And it actually bothers me to the point where I get upset that the Blue Jays and the Raptors particularly get hyped so much and
the
are
FC.
so beloved. And the Argos, who are the best team in Toronto, best professional sports team in Toronto, without question, don't get that kind of recognition, and it bothers the heck out of me.
Well,
Go ahead, Nick.
CFL, we're not getting the recognition. I mean, you look at the CFL awards finals going on right now, and you look at the nominations. All but one category for most outstanding Canadian, the East nominee is an Argonauts player. And it seems like throughout the league, there's always some excuse that someone has to not vote for the Toronto player. You don't vote for Chad Kelly because although he has the win record and they won with they had the playoff. There's the excuse, oh, he doesn't have the stats because they've led most games at halftime, so he hasn't had can win. Darius Pickett, oh, well, he doesn't have the interceptions. John Allen, oh, well, he's a Toronto O-lineman, even though the Toronto O-line's been the best O-line in the league. Javon Leake, well, compared to Sean White's made every field goal despite kicking at the easiest stadium to kick field goals in the league. Who and Dinwiddie, they make the excuse this year. He should have won it last year with what he was able to do with Toronto, and despite some of the criticism he took, like we all heard the dimwit nicknames and the we want Kelly instead of McLeod Bethel Thompson, but they still put the record they did. They clinched the East Finals, and the excuse players under him this year. That's why their team is 16-2. It has nothing to do with him and his coaching ability. Like, there just seems to be an excuse that underrates every single Toronto nominee as an excuse to not give them an award in any of their categories. I mean, I'm not complaining about it because yeah, it is just frustrating to see where in the same situation where the CFL gets undermined by the rest of other sports leagues, particularly because Toronto has the sports team in every one of these other leagues where other cities don't. In Canada, the Argonauts are the team that, in the same way that the CFL gets mocked by the NFL, the NHL, and everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, you were cutting out on me a little bit there, Nick, but from what I heard you say, you make very good points. It is true. There is no question whatsoever that the Argos don't get the recognition they deserve within the league and externally. And I don't know what can be done. I mean, I try. There's not much that I can do, but I try. And I do know some, really good journalists who do recognize it and try, but for the most part, it doesn't happen, and it's a darn shame. That's all I could say.
Agreed.
Marty and Nick, I wanted to ask you this: the Argonauts really haven't had their own stadium. BMO Field is kind of the FCs. The Sky Dome became the Blue Jays. Exhibition Stadium was originally the Argos until the Blue Jays got there in 77. I know when the Argos were at Varsity Stadium, that was their baby. But do you think having the Argonauts not having really their own true stadium over the years has hurt this franchise as well a little bit?
It's a good question again, Chris, but I don't know. I mean, I think BMO Field is a wonderful facility. I mean,
Yes.
I love that place, and I think watching football there is, for whatever reason, so much better than it was watching it at the Sky Dome or the Rogers Center, whatever you want to call it. So I absolutely think that BMO Field is great. Would its own stadium help? I'm not sure. That's above my pay grade. I'm not. I really don't know if that would work or not.
With Toronto real estate, it's above.
Pardon?
Sorry, with Toronto real estate, it's above the Argos pay grade.
Well, that's a good point, Nick. And I think that's what it comes down to. I don't, I'm guessing. I have no idea, but I don't think MLSE wants to invest that kind of money, for the Argos, a stadium for the Argos. I don't know. I'm sure that the Argos would like it. I'm sure Pinball Clemens would like it. I'm sure he'd love to have his own stadium. I would think anyway, but I don't know if it would help in terms of drawing crowds. And I really don't think that this is the time for building a stadium. And there's been a lot of talk about it in the past, but I don't think it's now. Stay at BMO Field and just people come out. That's all.
Absolutely. Marty, last question for you, and then I'll let Nick have a final thought with you. What were your thoughts on the development and play of quarterback Chad Kelly, who's always had the talent in college football and in the NFL, but he had some baggage coming to Toronto? So I just wanted to get your thoughts on Chad Kelly, and did you think he would be this good this year?
Well, no, I didn't think he would be this good this year. I missed the Grey Cup game last year because it's the only Grey Cup game that I've missed in, I don't know, since I was a teenager. So we're talking about a few years now, a few decades. And the reason I missed it was my brother's son's wedding, my nephew's wedding. So I didn't see Kelly come in off the bench. And I saw the highlights and ran through the recording quickly, but I heard he had a very good game, or he played a key role in the Grey Cup victory last year. When I heard about Bethel, what is his name again? I forgot.
Bethel Thompson.
Yeah, Bethel Thompson leaving the Argos. I never thought much of him as a. I know he was pretty effective, but he was a journeyman in my mind. And when he left, it didn't faze me. And I thought, well, give Kelly an opportunity. Did I think he'd be this good? No, I don't think anyone did. I didn't think he was going to be this solid, despite what happened in the Grey Cup game last year. But he's been unbelievable. And you know what? I'll tell you something else. If he got hurt, and I don't wish that upon him or anybody, but if he got injured in the next couple of games, I was very impressed with Dukes.
Dukes, yes.
I thought, here's a guy who can play. Now, I don't know where the Argos and Pinball and whoever's responsible for him found him, because I don't think he played at a great school.
The Arena League in Vegas, I believe. I interviewed Cameron Dukes here at the University of Guelph. Good kid. Good. I shouldn't call him kid, but I guess they reached out to the Argos and they liked his video footage and they brought him and his agent in. Yes. So he played in the Arena League.
That's Vegas. Very interesting. Well, he can run. He's got a decent arm and he looks like a good leader. So, I mean, here's another guy who I think probably could start on a few teams in the CFL. As I mentioned before, there's a dearth of top-notch quarterbacks in the league right now, as you know. I think I think he could start. I think he would be good too. Kelly's phenomenal. I really enjoy watching him. I think he's definitely a good leader. And I like a lot of those guys. I think Ouellette's terrific. I mean, the Argos have very good players. They're just not household names yet.
Nick, final thoughts for Marty before we let him go.
I guess let's just keep this simple. Now that we know what the playoffs are going to be like now in the second round, what's your predictions for Montreal and Toronto and BC and Winnipeg? Who do you have picked on the spot if you had to?
Okay, well, Nick, I am gonna, I take the Argos, and I think, so I don't see any reason to think that they won't continue their winning streak against the Alouettes. That's my opinion. Although I agree with, I think, what both of you said in our conversation here, that the Alouettes have improved. I just think the Argos are in the East. They're in a league by themselves. I do think it'll be a rematch of last year's Grey Cup game. I at this moment, and I may change my view once I see the spread and everything else, but I think the Bombers are a very strong team. I think Oliveira is an amazing running back, a guy who can get you 10 yards whenever you want. They've got guys like Dembski and these guys are Canadian, so they're really quite amazing. And then they have weapon after weapon. I mean, Sean, these guys can play. And I'm not even mentioning Collaros, who's become a very good quarterback in Winnipeg after a bit of a journeyman career. Mm-hmm. So I think, unless Vernon Adams lights it up again like he did today against Calgary, but again, as I said earlier, these are different teams, Calgary and Winnipeg. So I think it'll be a Winnipeg-Toronto rematch in the Grey Cup game.
Yeah, given the sort of underwhelming game it was in the regular season with Toronto and Winnipeg after they already clinched, I think everybody seems to be seething and dying for the rematch between them at the Grey Cup. It just seems to be written in paper right now that everybody wants to see that game. So I'm hoping for that kind of a result as well. I think it would make for an exciting.
And assuming that these two teams get by next week, get by their opponents next week, I would imagine the Argonauts would be favored for the Grey Cup game. And last year they won as underdogs against the Blue Bombers. This year, just going to say it, this year they're the favorites. Not so sure that they could beat Winnipeg in the Grey Cup game. Not sure.
Marty, we're going to wrap this up. Are you going to be at the game at BMO Field next Saturday?
Yeah, I probably will be. Yeah, I thinking of taking.
Well, I'm going to be there as a fan.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. I could have done media work, but I decided I want to go as a fan so I can have a beer and sit in section 115, row 10C2 with my friend Tim and see Nick and his family as well. So, Marty, hopefully I'll run into you there, and I'm really looking forward to this East Final. I'm hoping the weather will be good, and they get at least 23,000 at BMO Field, at least.
Yeah, I'm hoping the same, and I hope you and Tim have a great time at the game. And Nick, it was a pleasure talking to you as well.
Same here, Marty. Thank you very much.
Take care, guys.
Marty, and where can my audience or our audience follow you on social media?
So all I do these days, I have another job these days. I'm a director of communications for a charity. But you can follow me on X at Marty York. Marty York.
Okay, definitely. But Marty, hey, I want to say thank you so much for coming on here tonight. I will send you an audio and video copy of our show, and you have an open invite to come back again on as a guest in the future as well.
Thanks, Chris. I enjoyed it very much. Have a great night.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Marty.
See ya.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. All right, Nick, final thoughts on our guest tonight, Marty York, former sports journalist with the Globe and Mail, TSN, Sportsnet, Metro newspapers across Canada.
Yeah, it was great to have Marty's insights, someone who's clearly been in the same level that he was now as he was back then. But it's always really fun to have a guest like him come on and offer some insights and bringing that perspective of what it was like to work with guys like Pinball and Henry Burris. Talking to Scott Milanovic and Anthony Calvillo and guys like that. So, especially speculating moving forward in the off season, who could possibly fill those roles in. So, yeah, lots of fun to talk about that.
And just some more positive news before we wrap this up. The CFL, I got this off of Third Down Nation by Justin Dunk. I like to credit him. And the CFL regular season TV ratings have increased over 11% in 2023 on TSN. And I think that's great news. And that also is probably from live streaming as well. And I do think the CFL is making steps into getting more exposure for the league. And it's great that the attendance is up, the TV ratings is up as well.
Especially in places like Toronto, where we've kind of struggled the last little while over attendance and viewership. I remember them talking just about someone talking about just Toronto viewage numbers and how much they have spiked. So it's really good to see that like in some of the most dense markets, places like Saskatchewan where they haven't. But even in places like Hamilton this year, it's risen up. So it's really exciting to see, and that the league is growing out of COVID, and we're basically back to where we were pre-COVID. So it's just getting back to where we were. We're there now, and just keep focused on building those numbers and trying to grow our game. Hopefully, with the way like the Touchdown Atlantic went, I think it brought something like $11 million of revenue in the Halifax area. So using Inspire, bringing a team there, if we can do that, get that 10th team in, balance the East and West, and use that moving forward. I think it's those little steps that can be built towards that big jump, and then hopefully just find a little bit more stability going forward.
What are you looking forward towards this Eastern final game this Saturday, November 11th at 3:00? And what kind of a score do you see between the Argos and Alouettes? And maybe just get your prediction on the BC Winnipeg game before we wrap this up.
Yeah, I think the both games could very well be dominated by the home team. I think when you both teams won their home matchups, respective matchups like this last year or earlier this season. So I think Toronto does have the ability to run away with this one. They're a better defense than Hamilton's, and Fajardo, while they won the game, they didn't put up that many points or that spectacular numbers. So I think the Argos, the big difference is the Argos D is far more capable at shutting down stand back. His best game, I think he had something like 12 carries for 50 some odd yards. So they're much better at shutting down that running game, and Fajardo isn't necessarily as adept. So it could lead Toronto to run away with this one early. And the same thing with Winnipeg and BC. BC has looked good this week, and they've had some good games, but they also put up a stinker in Winnipeg. And I think between both stadiums having really loud crowds, Toronto and Winnipeg, you know that Winnipeggers aren't afraid of the cold or wet weather, so they're going to be there in force. And I think Toronto fans are going to put on a big loud show as well. So I'm expecting both Toronto and Winnipeg to win rather handedly against their opponents. That would be my prediction.
Okay, well, I'll give you my predictions before we wrap this up. And before I give our predictions, I want to say thank you to everyone watching this live streamed on Facebook, LinkedIn, my YouTube channel. Please subscribe if you already haven't had to. Twitch and on Twitter /X. And this show will be aired on radio station WQEE 99.1 FM in Metro Atlanta, the home of Southern Talk and Sports. My predictions for these games, I've got Toronto winning 30-20 over Montreal, 30-20 over Montreal. I think the score is going to be a little bit closer than people think. 10-point win for the Argonauts. And then the West Final, I think it's going to be a shootout. I could be wrong. It could be a defensive battle, but I'm going to go with Winnipeg 37, BC 34.
Yeah, to put numbers, I'd probably put something in the ballpark of 30-10 for Toronto and Winnipeg for both of their games. I think I can't remember. I haven't compared it, but Toronto, I don't think they've scored less than 30 points a game at home.
I think you're right about that, Nick.
Yeah.
I guess we'll have to research it, but I think you're right. But I just think the Argos will win by 10, and I think Winnipeg will beat BC by 3. But BC's proven they can win in Winnipeg, and I just think BC's got a very good team, and we'll see what happens. But I'm really looking forward to the East Final. And Nick, for our audience, what's the best place for them to get tickets for the game on Saturday in Toronto?
The Toronto Argonauts website. If worse, then you gotta do it by phone. 416-341-ARGO is the company phone number. But yeah, I think in the north. So if you want to sit, I think the only tickets left are in the north side, which are around the ballpark of $30 to $40. I think. Temporary seats underneath the scoreboard, so they're a bit cheaper, but you might not have the best view of the scoreboard, but you're also more involved in the game. And then the east side is that upper deck area, starting from I think the first 6 rows right now, and they'll probably add more if those tickets get sold. And I think those are running around $60 a ticket, so they're very inexpensive, very affordable, and yeah, I encourage you all to go if you haven't been to a game this year or football. Yeah, I would suggest that for the best value, send that upper east deck. It's a great during the Grey Cup in 2016 when Ottawa beat Calgary, and it was a great experience there. So.
Okay, and if you can't get down to the game, you can check out the CFL website at cfl.ca. The game will be live streamed as well. And also, you can watch the game on TSN. I'm assuming it'll be Rod Smith and Dwayne Ford for this game, I'm assuming. And on TSN, on the radio, 1050 with Mike Hogan and Ben Grant, who do a great job doing the Argos games on the radio as well. Hey, Nick, I'm going to be coming as a fan, so I will be able to have a beer with you. I'll be able to talk with you, and I'll be able to see the guy that sits beside me, Tim, in section 115. And I'm really looking forward to this game, and it's been a great season. My first time as a season ticket holder, and they go 16-2. So, of course, Nick, I've got to renew my season tickets for next year as well. Maybe it's the Chris Pomay factor as well. I'm just kidding on that.
Yeah. We'll definitely see you again, and yeah, getting to enjoy and experience and embrace the last Argos home game of the year now, and hopefully seeing you at the Grey Cup. Well, I'm going to be there regardless, but it would definitely be extra special to have the Argonauts come back there for it.
And fingers crossed they get approved for a Grey Cup media pass. Fingers crossed. But Nick, we'll see you this Saturday at BMO Field, and we'll definitely have a beer together in the stands. And I'm looking forward to a great game. Argos Alouettes, 3:00 on Saturday, and then it's going to be BC at Winnipeg at 6:30. Should be another great day of football games, and looking forward to it. And I want to say thank you to Marty York again for coming on tonight as a special guest. And thank you everybody for watching this live streamed and also on our audio platforms. And you can also follow Nick and I on Twitter, myself at Christy Pomay on Twitter. And Nick, what's your Twitter handle?
Nick_small_38.
Perfect. Well, Nick, have a great night. Get some sleep. Make sure you change your clock back an hour behind with the daylight savings time change. Everybody here in Ontario or in the States. And we'll see you for episode 16, hopefully to talk about an Argos Eastern Championship win and going back to the Grey Cup. Fingers crossed. But again, thank you, Nick, for coming on, Marty York for coming on, and WQEE.
Go Argos.
WQEE 99.1 FM for having us on as well. Have a great night, Nick. And as always, I'm going to say this like Chad Kelly does. Go Argos.
Go Argos.
Good night, everybody. And thanks for tuning in to the Argo Bounce live audio show with Nick Small and myself, Chris Pomay. We'll see you after the Eastern final and hopefully another Argo victory. Good night, everybody. Go Argo.
Go, Toronto Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the foe, foe, foe. Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach the top. Pull together till the Grey Cups won. Go Argos, go, go, go. Go, Toronto Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the foe, foe, foe. Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach the